purification event. We become complacent and allow for weeds to grow in the cracks of London. It's time to clear them out with Roundup and liberate Golders Green for the future generations of white people. Join us on July the 4th for what promises to be an absolute gas.
Absolute what?
Gas.
Please.
This is a most terrible expression, including with the appeal that it should bring to this event on the coming Shabbat in Golders Green, copies of the Talmud to burn up and the flag of Israel to tear up, because to burn will put them all in prison. It's forbidden in England. However, it's working now?
It's working now.
However, there is some hope. There is careful optimism in Golders Green, because the head arouser of the rabble, Joshua Bonghill Fine, has been arrested because of incitement for racism.
Excuse me, Rabbi. These are Jews?
No, of course not. Anti-Jew. He is one of the leaders, not the only one, because now he's in prison. Doesn't mean they're stopping he doesn't mind being in prison.
No, I thought it was neo-Nazis.
The organization, there's still enough people in this group who want to make the demonstration. So, however, there is latest news that they're hoping that the demonstration will be forbidden. They're working with all connections that are available to stop it. So, as I started explaining yesterday, that the point, one of the darkest aspects of this demonstration is the pinpointing of what was described in the Middle Ages, the Talmud Judah, the Jew of the Talmud, based primarily upon such complete misinterpretations, because the whole approach of Talmudic Judaism, one studies it more deeply and widely, is in relationship to the non-Jewish world. It's recognized that those who worship idols, this is the consensus. There are debates about it, but the consensus is we can base it upon the descriptions we've given in the past, the difference in the first temporal period and the second temporal period. The symbol of the second temporal period is the power of idolatry, which was rampant amongst the Jewish people, has been removed through the men of the Great Assembly, and the second temporal period, under the ensign of the menorah, were told, your control of this land, which was produced by peaceful means, because Koresh gave support. Koresh was like the superpower of his time, included the whole Middle East under his auspices, and he wanted the Jewish people to go back to the land in a peaceful manner, without fighting, and to build the temple. It does not mean that they didn't have to protect themselves. Unfortunately, there were many ups and downs, and often the Jewish people had to defend themselves against those that wanted to destroy them. However, the basic approach was, in relationship to the non-Jewish world, the non-Jew does not yet accept the faith of the Jewish people. The approach has got to be one of Darkei Shalom, ways of peace, that goes all the way through the Talmud. In the Middle Ages, as we described already, one of the ways in which the Christians tried to, in the anti-Semitic stream that existed amongst them, to destroy the Jewish people, was also to destroy the Talmud, and to burn it. And we already described how this was caused through Zot Chukat HaTorah, Zerat, Sreifat HaTorah, which came about, as we saw, primarily through Machloket, as we described yesterday. And the Nazis, they adopted every form of anti-Jewishness, but they were against all the Jewish people on the basis of racism. So this new movement that started here, in fact, why they're burning the Talmud? Because the Talmud, they claim, is racist against the white race, which is, of course, a complete libel. No such thing. We know that from the point of view of racial aspects, this concept of a person with blonde hair and blue eyes belongs to the Aryan race, and the Jews differently. It's anyone knows today that there's, I don't know exact statistics, but there's certainly plenty of blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jews from every angle, halachic Jews. We know that there's an intermingling of races all over the world in each group. This complete, stupid lie is brought against the Jew. Except that should be in the Talmud. It's just ridiculous. But they used everything. The Stürmer used every possible lie in order to demonize the Jewish people. We know some of the extreme Muslims are doing it as well. But I would like to say a certain message to the Western world, influenced by present-day trends in the vast majority of Christian groups, and also to the Muslims even more. To the Muslims who really believe in the moral teachings of the Quran, and who believe in the prophecy of Moses, and who include in the Quran there are many Talmudical episodes and traditions which are brought into the Quran, that we have today joined our forces together for Darkei Shalom, to remove all aspects of violence from inter-faith relationships and international relationships. And that's the only way in which mankind will survive. All those who believe in the fact that the human being was created in the divine image, which demands minimum code of civilization expressed in the Noahide Code, accepted also by many in the Muslim world, let us work together to condemn and remove these evil groups that, they want to gas up. Not of course this gas roundup, as it comes on this poster, which I can show you here. It's a poster. Perhaps it can be seen on this screen, I don't know. Yeah? Someone knows how to put it on the screen. It's this poster is, of course, it's a terrible thing. This should be spread in Golders Green. You see, even in the O of Golders Green, they put the sign of an explosion. So this is the underworld that's taking away the world of mankind. That's what's happening today. And with these death groups going around, which are really death groups, not death groups, and spreading far and wide, many people joining them, is the worst instincts of the human being, which are being aroused, unfortunately given support. And the fact that Iran says, we don't like Daesh, but the truth is that Iran, they're the powers to blow up embassies. They don't use the same methods as Daesh. They don't publicize the cruelties that they support all over the world. So this is the situation we're in today, and we appeal to the leaders of mankind to recognize this danger, which, however, requires a strong education. Education in the development of the divine power in the human being, of saintliness. So, now to go from this to the description which I gave yesterday, first of all, of the burning of the Talmud and other manuscripts in the time before printing, 771 years ago, which took place on previous week, and it hinted at in Zot Chukat HaTorah, Zot Gezeirat Oraita, there's a decree that the Torah will be burnt. And if we analyze it, most of the scholars at that time were told it's because you Jews, the scholars amongst you, have too much machloket. And they recognize it because of the enormous splits which took place amongst Jews who were concerned with Torah and who studied the works of Torah. Nevertheless, instead of following the way of Hillel and Shammai, it was also a big debate, but it was in a friendly fashion, in a constructive fashion, because there's no question learning Talmud increases the critical faculty of Bina, of analyzing things and understanding things. And therefore, the development of the oral tradition requires, let's say, intellectual battles, because the human being has an instinct for struggling. We know we have to struggle sometimes to be able to have enough to eat. Struggle. We have competitors. Sometimes you have to struggle against the beasts of the environment, the dangerous animals. And some we have human beasts, so we have to struggle. We should always struggle in a manner that we can do it without any destruction. Certainly when we use that struggle to develop our intelligence, because a person only through fighting against his weaker character inside himself, then a stronger, more saintly character can rule. So it's a struggle with himself. Therefore, when it comes to developing, absorbing the principles of Torah, the person needs to struggle with himself. And sometimes that struggle leads him also to struggle to clarify the truth by clashing with others. When you clash with others, you follow the way of Hillel and Shammai. But sometimes the individual self-centeredness takes over, many times subconsciously, and then the struggle becomes sharp, violent words. And the violent words, unfortunately, can also lead to dangerous situations, which took place in the pro-Maimonides and anti-Maimonides struggle of the early Middle Ages, which produced the burning of the books of the Rambam. And then we see the greatest Gedolim of that time, they said, we have to change. We have to understand the value of the Rambam. And even if we don't agree, we can have a different opinion, that it's better not to allow, let's say, the guide for the perplexed to become the perplexity of the teachers, of the Morim, who as a result will cast doubts upon the oral tradition, and sometimes even upon the written tradition. This can happen, happens even in more recent times. People say, well, give a person who knows nothing about Jewish thought, give him the guide for the perplexed to read. There are many things there that he will not accept, because the guide for the perplexed was written by the Rambam for those who had to confront Aristotelian thought. The Jews at that time, the golden period of Spanish Jewry, they were some of the most advanced scholars of the age in the sciences and in the philosophies, and they could translate works from one language to the other, and they had contact with Muslim philosophers and Christian philosophers, and they debated with them, and some of them became confused. They took the Rambam, they became confused. There were more people, and the Rambam wrote it for them, he says in the introduction, who, not because of him, but because they had studied more of the general culture of the time than they'd studied the Torah, and for them he wrote this book in Arabic. Therefore, it answers many questions. As it can answer many questions today as well, of people who want to solve the questions of how to reconcile the results of science and other academic disciplines with the Torah, with written and the oral tradition. And there are many sections, more than Fuchim, which speak to our age as well. But there are others that are no longer relevant. And he was dealing here with a mindset that said Aristotle is science, not philosophy, it's all scientific. Therefore, it's the absolute truth. People who believed in Aristotle, and then when it came to the Bible, there were certain questions. When it came to origin, other questions. But today, Aristotle's out of date in science. And Aristotle has been overcome. So therefore, there are sections which are very good, certain sections which will not answer the question so well. So, this is what happened 700 years ago. And all the great scholars of the time, they said, Machloket, we have to remove. Let it not go over the borders which are given in the Talmud itself, how far you can go. Now, a few hundred, 300 years later, after the age of printing, so the Jews were also at the forefront of printing, using printing to spread Torah knowledge. Since there were so few manuscripts left, Jews, they were now able to buy printed books. So, one of the first books, the book Rashi was printed, then sections of the Talmud were printed. And some of the major printing firms were in Italy, where there were great scholars, where there were also rich people. And the Jews had also, many of them, a high status in the country. So, they had an argument. They printed, in fact, it's how history goes. There's a certain divine providence in what happens to the history of Jewish literature, which is parallel to what happens for the survival of the Jewish people. Because we saw the previous one's machloket about the Rambam. And here the machloket was when they printed them. Two firms decided we're going to print the first issue of the Rambam Yad HaChazakah, which is never in dispute. The Yad HaChazakah is the classical work on which afterwards Beis Yosef, he based his Torah on it, and then he based the Shulchan Aruch on it. The Rambam is still the major Rishon, major early authority for halakha until today. So, two firms decided at the same time to print the Rambam, because one didn't know of the other. Each one thought he had the monopoly. And then they got into an argument. They went to Din Torah about it. So they said, what right, each one claimed he had first rights, and therefore Why is the competitor going in his way? And there's one even blamed the other for using the other one, and there had big disputes. First they made a din Torah, and then they took it to the Beit HaMishpat, like happens here as well in Israel. Sometimes the din Torah between Jewish Haredim, and there is forbidden to take a din Torah to the secular court. The secular court here in Israel has adopted, unfortunately, a mixture of non-Jewish laws, non-Jewish ways. They sometimes also quote Jewish law, especially if one of the supreme judges has a bit of knowledge of Jewish law. But we've had a situation let's give a classic example, which is very unfortunate. You know, today, Ari Dari is well known, is the top power in Shas, and now is the top power in the government. Well, what happened to him? He was a brilliant politician, representative of Haredi Judaism, and there was a certain din Torah which developed into a court case in the Beit HaMishpat, and the accusation was based upon one of the aspects of general jurisprudence in the Western world, concerning which one can say, there's a saying in English, the law is an ass, the law is a donkey. And one of the ways where the law is a donkey is the concept of a state witness. Do you know what a state witness is? It's based upon the most extreme form of bribery, which one can imagine. And sometimes what happened here, and happens frequently, the main accusation against the Dari and those who were with him was it was a case of bribery which is forbidden. So what happened? Who was the main state witness? There was one of the people who was involved in this supposed bribery, and he was in fact almost under arrest from the Swiss courts because of his fraud. He was a fraud and was arrested and accused of being a fraud and proved to be a fraud, and he was a bit involved also in the accusation against Aridai. So what do they say? We make you a state witness. A state witness, you take one of the people suspected of being involved in the crime, and you tell him, if you will give testimony against the main accused, then we'll free you from punishment. You will not be arrested, you will not be punished. Which is certainly, according to Jewish law, which follows very strictly prohibition of bribery, but bribery of witnesses as well. And what greater bribery can be for a witness if really he should be in jail for many years, and you tell him, if you're going to give a testimony against the others who were involved, you won't get a jail sentence. There's no greater bribery than that. And because of that, Aridari sat in prison for many years. Well, the populace recognize it's all false. And these are the Supreme Court. Now let's go back to Italy, which was a big center of Torah in the Middle Ages. After the time of printing, there was an argument between these two printing firms, like the Rambam. So what did they do? They went and brought the case in front of the secular Christian courts, and then they got the priests involved, and then they got the Pope involved, and therefore they asked the Pope, please, since they're all arguing about things, what did they bring as their arguments? They said, the way he's printed the Rambam is included an accusation against the founder of Christianity, because certain words were interpreted in such a manner. You should see the many of the Talmud issues of that time were in any case under censorship. And wherever it says the word min in the Talmud, comes frequently in the Mishnah as well. Mishnah in the Talmud, min. Min is the word which is used for heretic, and is also used sometimes to refer to the Christians. In the Talmud, it's true. This Talmud, there are sections deal with Christianity, and the early Christians were known as minim, because they went away from the faith of the Jewish people. They called minim. Min means a sect, it's a group, different species. different type is a min. So you find there's such howlers of the senses. Some of the sense didn't know Hebrew well enough. For example, when the mission says Arba minim shebelulav, the 4 species that join the lulav. So the censor crosses off. It does not allow the word to appear. In fact, if you look at some of the ancient, antique editions of the Gemara, of the Mishnah, of the Rambam, there are plenty of things like that. They put in Abba Akumim. Akum, because Akum means somebody avodah kochavim, means somebody who's an idolater. The censor didn't mind there were negative terms connected with people who really worship idols. So they changed the word min, thinking it means Christianity, to Akum, and then they were allowed to print it. These are sort of things that went on, the early print. So, in any case, there was a decree made by the Pope as a result. We have to burn the Talmud, burn the Rambams, burn it all up, because it contains negative aspects of Christianity. And then a bit later on, there was a better Pope who said, you can issue the Talmud as long as it goes under very strict censorship, and they leave out all the passages that deal with these suspicious statements against the Christians. And that's why you'll find even the printed, more normal printed editions of the Gemara today and of the Rambam, all references that hint at the Christian world have been deleted and not printed in the ordinary editions. For that you've got to go to more modern editions that include it. And there's also, there was used to be produced a little booklet called Chasei Hashas, things that are missing in nearly all the printed versions of the Gemara for a number of centuries. And there you find all the references to debates between Jews and Christians. It's very interesting. In any case, in the time of Italy, in the time of Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, which is also a time, on the one hand, great scholars were still around, but then it became very difficult to get any printed books, because they burned them up. They also burned them up in Rome itself, the Roman main center. Under certain popes, they burned up. They went around the houses, and any Hebrew books they found, they just burned them up. That's what happened in the time of Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. I can bring here contemporary references to this. It's a most unusual situation, and this is being aroused again today. So I'll tell you. When it had turned out that in Italy they started burning up all the editions, printed editions available in the Talmud, and to forbade them to be found in any places, and as a result Yeshivat had to be closed. And this danger would apply to any Sfarim which were contained by the Jews, which the Jews possessed. So they wanted to pass this on to all people who had any libraries of Hebrew books. And who helped them? You think? Jewish missionaries. Jews had gone over to the Christian church. I mean, they were paid well, and they were the agents, because many of the Christians themselves didn't know enough about Hebrew books, but they knew. So the communities in Italy, they used every influence they had available in the courtyard of the Pope to stop widening this decree. And then came a later Pope, and he listened to their appeals and gave a rule that all Jews should give over all their books to which contain certain things against Christianity, and they have to give them all to the Christians, and they will destroy them. But all other books which contain no reference to Christianity, it was fixed. We have to have a fixed power of censors whose purpose will be to go through any books the Jews possess, whether manuscripts, what was left, or printed books, and they would erase anything against Christianity found in those books. So those who have antique books, they're worth a lot of money, they'll see inside comments of the censor. So as a result, some of the books were saved. Then, but what happened as a result? There were many Jews in Poland already, and they started printing books where there was no such rule. That's in Lublin, it's formed in Shinyutet 400 years ago. The Rosh Yeshivat, they helped the printers to print what they taught in the Yeshivat. And as soon as they printed a certain Masechta, you see, they told them which one would be the priority to learn, they printed it. Then there came a time when the term Talmud became also something to be banned. So instead of Talmud, they called it Gemara. Anyway. They changed many things. Now, with regard to this Gezerah, we see clearly that one of the elements was again Machloket. But in Italy, which was one of the major places of all these decrees, there arose the great saint and Kabbalist Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, who was a genius when he was a child, great master of Hebrew, master of the sciences as well, and a great master of both learning, and he dedicated himself heart and soul. So he wrote a letter as follows about this. And I'm going to paraphrase this in the original. It says, at that time, he learnt in Mantua and then this is what he writes. You asked me concerning the decree of the Sfarim in the country of the Pope. You know that I keep myself away from speaking about these matters to others. But this was a person who was to some extent his teacher. So he says to him, to you, this is not a small matter, it's a very important matter. And I will explain, as far as I know, the decree of the Torah. It has its root. And what is the root? It's the word Zot Chukat Torah, where the most ancient translation of this phrase is Gezerat Oraita. There's a divine decree of the Torah. And it's known that here is the hint, the root of all these troubles we're having with the burning of the books. And this is really the significance of the Para Aduma. Because the Para Aduma represents the Midat Hadin, the Chazak. You know, the color red, Mars, is the color of destruction of the world, destruction of the human image, of the Tzelem Elokim. The Shekhinah, the divine presence of Hashem in this world, gives itself over in order to save the people of Israel by burning up the accusation. To understand these words, I mean, they're following here the deeper concepts of Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. So I'm going to say a few words. Mesilat Yesharim, which is his most popular classical work, a great classic. Like today they have, a 12-step program to get rid of addictions. The Mesilat Yesharim is also a 12-stage program. If you count just 12 or 13 steps written in the Gemara. How you can keep away from addiction to the evil inclination and reach the highest level, which is Ruach HaKodesh, to get the Holy Spirit. Now, there are two versions of Mesilat Yesharim. The one which is popular and widespread contains no reference to any even hint of a Kabbalah. It's entirely based upon the Torah Tanigle, on open statements made by the sages and made in the Chumash, made in the Tanakh, by the prophets and sages, which have to do with morality, which have to do how can the human being become a saint? Because he's got inside himself a sinner. The inside, but freedom of choice. How do we change? So in fact, the introduction to his most important work, which I recommend everybody to study in English, if you don't know Hebrew yet, apart from a shir that you can get from it, but you can read it yourselves in English. It can have a big impact if you really think about it. His introduction is the most important thing in life we tend to neglect. It applies to all human beings. What's the most important thing? Every person has to know Ma chovato b'olamo, what is his particular duty in his world. And the conscience is really a development of the human conscience. The conscience of the human being teaches us you've got to struggle with the evil inside yourself, and that way you reach the highest level of human living. And if we all have that possibility, go step by step. Maybe you shouldn't try to jump steps. If you jump them, then you can more easily fall. Shouldn't stay in man. So he says, the para aduma is also known. The aduma, throughout the Tanakh, is the concept of sinfulness. It's shown in Yom Kippur when the thread which is put at the entrance to the temple, in a part of the temple, and also put on the horns of the goat, when it was red, and when it turned white, they knew they had atonement. So this is the deeper concept of the blood, and blood is also connected with Dam, of Mars, and what that represents. So this is, but what is this evil inclination? It's not evil, the Midas Hadin, it's not evil in itself. It is like the Hebrew language also, as we know, a language in which the world was created. That means it contains the basic elements of understanding nature. So even the word power, which we have today, or productivity, is all connected with para, or the root peiresh in the Tanakh is the root of expressing power, the power of nature, because the cow is productive, produces milk, produces meat, produces the ability to work, to help also man in his harder labor. So it represents productivity. So the Shekhinah gives itself over to burn up the great power of evil which exists in the world in order to save the people of Israel, to bring us to purity. And that it gives the purity from those who can't be made pure by any other means. In fact, the Midrash says there are two types of impurity and ways of removing it. There's one type you've got to go into a mikveh, but that means you've got to make the effort. Throw yourself, dive into the waters of purification, and then if you dive in, you do take strong steps, you become purified. The waters are representing the waters of Torah, the waters of purity, the waters of immersing yourself. As we say in Yeshivat, you've got to lie inside the learning and feel the power of learning is filling your imagination and filling your whole life. The deeper teachings of every aspect of the mitzvahs and every every line of the Tanakh or the line of Gemara which you're learning, if that goes on in your mind, that's purification, immersing yourself in it. What if you're not strong enough to immerse yourself in it? You can't, because after all you're a human being and you've got such instincts that don't give you spiritual life, they only give you physical life. And you only feel the physical life. So the sages say, a person, that's eternity you have inside you, but many times we're raised even in an environment which is totally materialistic. And therefore any aspect of the saintliness which resides inside you is perhaps there in the most bottom parts of the subconscious mind, but it doesn't even come in the conscious mind. What do you do then? So really, you are spiritually dead when you're alive, according to the definitions given in the Tanakh by the prophets. Then you need sprinkling from above, like the person's got tumat met. Tumat met, a person who's spiritually dead because he's become so much involved in materialistic life, and even people speak to him about virtue, they don't know what you're talking about. What's virtue? What's saintliness? What's the divine image? It's all an illusion. You even get big philosophers who'll tell you that. I heard it from big philosophers. The soul and Satan is all a big illusion. It's not true. It's all. The only truth that exists is the physical world. The human mind is just one of the expressions of the physical world, which creates all sorts of illusions. That's it, all hallucination. Speak of past life, future life. It's still just like a dream that has no reality. It comes because your biochemical structure, the food that you're eating, is not healthy for your body. So that's it. So how do you get rid of that? So Hashem said, I'm sprinkling it on top of you. It says, Cheskel said about Am Yisrael, I'm going to, Zarachti Aleichem Mayim Torim, I'll throw it on you. Where do we have that? The Kohen takes the Mayim Chayim, the living waters, the living waters represent living waters of inspiration of the Torah, intermingles it with the ashes of the paraduma, and sprinkles a person who's got tumat met, becomes tahor. Only then is he fit to do the service in the Beit HaMikdash. Without that, no. So the Shekhinah gives it over. I'm just interpreting here the words of the Rosh Sato, who quotes it with Kabbalistic language. So I want to tell you something. Any of you who studied his life, he was one of the greatest Kabbalists of all times, and he was even at a very young age he mastered the whole of the Talmud. As you'll see from all his works, he had a fantastic high level of intelligence. And you find downstairs even one of his books was not so well known, but somebody who's really studied philosophy thoroughly was able to explain it, how he describes, based also part of the Rambam. The Rambam wrote a book also, Milotai Gayon, which is a basic teaching of logic, and he develops logic to its highest levels, but also the logic of the Gemara. So he was also a big Kabbalist, but he lived after the time of Shabtai Tzvi. Shabtai Tzvi, he caught a breakdown of the Jewish people, and then he became a Muslim. And he used Kabbalah. It's with the power of Kabbalah that many people went after him and said he's the Mashiach and so on. Then he spoke to the Sultan and so on. So as you know the basic story. The big split, they had his followers. There's still a few of his followers in Istanbul. There's still what's left of those who feel Shabtai Tzvi, the hidden group. But on the whole, it disappeared. But some say, really, the Zionist movement, the secular Zionist movement, is also a result of Shabtai Tzvi. It's a continuation, a different form. In any case, it's because so much suffering comes upon Am Yisrael. The Am Yisrael clutches at a straw and they say, well, he must be the Mashiach. And that's why we've got a very dangerous movement today as well. The Mashiachistim, very dangerous, and the Lubavitch Rebbe opposed them very much. I keep on repeating it. in order, because I was a direct witness to this, I discussed it with the Rebbe a few times, and it's a complete lie. The Rebbe was very much against. It's quite the opposite. Just like the Horovitz it all kept on and wait for the true Mashiach, which means you've got to change, you've got to do teshuvah. And that was the call of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, do teshuvah. That's why he was able to, in this way, to inspire the movement teshuvah more than any other individual in recent times. But some have gone overboard because they're influenced by Christianity. Some maybe also by, by previous secular Zionism can also lead to false messianism. It's like, many came from Teiman, from other places, and they saw that here there's a great leader called David. Yeah, so they got David Melech Yitzchak v'Kayam. David's bringing us back from all the travels we're having here, whether it's in Iraq or in Iran or whether it's in Teiman. He's bringing us back on a flying carpet, the airplanes, Al-Kanfi Nisharim. And what do they say when he came? Mashiach, he's Mashiach. When I came to Israel the first time, I witnessed how some of these immigrants thought, in truth, that David Ben Gurion is the Melech HaMashiach. So it's a similar concept. So after all, if he's not Mashiach Ben David, it's certainly Mashiach Ben Yosef. You'll find even some people talking about that. The people this terms of two Mashiachim. They say, so he was Mashiach Ben Yosef. Mashiach was died in the end. The short preparation Mashiach Ben David. These are risky teachings. So the Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, whose many semi-Kabbalistical writings have now become basic teachings in all the yeshivas who teach Musa, like Dat Hashem and Derech Hashem, Dat Hashem. These for him he already touches on quite a few Kabbalistical points. So what happened? Because there was also hints that were interpreted by some people as though he thought he was the Mashiach. The people suspect him of this. Therefore, he was put under a ban of excommunication, that he was not permitted to print any of his works. And the original Mesilat Yesharim that he produced, which had been found in manuscript form, like in the Leningrad Library, so that does contain the Kabbalistic basis for Mesilat Yesharim.
Wait, who was...
And let me go on this because it's very fascinating. So, he was even banned by many of the Rabbanim in Italy, where it created problems. So he had to go to other places. And he had to go and sign in Amsterdam and in other places where there were Jews who built up a strong community in Amsterdam, mainly for people who had escaped from Spain, Spanish Inquisition. So many of his books had to be burnt also.
Wait,
Many of Moshe Chaim's were burnt also. Still went on with it. Because they were afraid that people would, but this burned by the Rabbonim, who said, didn't make a public of it, in private. And also he had to assign that he's not going to print or publish any more things to do with Kabbalah. And he died young, he died at the age of 4. So but here these letters are very revealing. So he says, he explains what's the Para Aduma. This teaching of his has great relevance to what's happening today. You'll see. And I'm going to interpret his semi-Kabbalistic description here to direct moral teachings for all Am Yisrael today. So he says, the strongest Tumah is Tumat Met, Avi Avot HaTumah, it's called the grandfather of impurity. And this has no tikkun, only with a paraduma. And this is also the deeper concept of the impurity of the Galut. Because it says in the Pasuk, where we lament the banishment, dispersal of the people of Israel, one of the verses is, Hashem has put me into dark places like the dead of the world. So what's the Galut really? It's like being dead. The nation is dead. And unfortunately, most of the nation of Israel has died in the Galut. The 10 tribes died in the Galut, and the remaining tribes that went to Bovel, then afterwards they also came back to Eretz Yisrael, Second Temple period. They were dispersed also. Majority of Jews died in the Galut. And we thought maybe with enlightenment, which came to the world under such enlightened Christian people as Reuchlin and others, who said the Jews are valuable and their teaching is very important also for the Christian world. And many Christians also thought, let's go and bring enlightenment to the Jewish people and give them equality and give them all the right. And there was no place in the world which was so enlightened as Germany and Berlin. That's where Jews said, we're now in a new age, and the Jewish people will no longer be persecuted. And in that place, Bismarck came with his anti-Semitism, and then there came the great German professors and scholars who tore up the Bible of the Jews and said the Bible of the Jews has got to be cut up. It's all different bits and pieces, Rainbow Bible, to dissect the Bible. Before there came the dissection of the body of the Jewish people coming from that same Berlin, Germany. So, can we say Allah? The Galut is like being killed as a nation. And it says, there's a reference in the Midrash that the daily offering of the people of Israel, it goes up on the Moked. Moked is, in Reta Hebrew, is to be burnt in public all the night of the Galut. But this has to bring it to the Mata. This situation of the Galut has got to bring the arousal from below. Why does Hashem allow it? Because Hashem, He started the Jewish people in suffering, in Egypt. And the Jewish people had to start crying to Hashem. They saw there's no other way. It's only because the people, led by Moshe Rabbeinu, kept on crying to Hashem, save us from complete annihilation here in Egypt, where the decree apparently was without end and would have finished off, exterminated the Jewish people at birth, that we were saved. So, in the time when there's Beit HaMikdash, there was the ashes of the Paraduma, and that brought an atonement. Because the ashes of Paraduma, they bring the atonement. The sprinkling can be done from the Kohanim. The Kohanim still keep alive in the elite core of the Jewish people of being attached to holiness, and that's where they're able to bring the offerings of holiness in the temple. But once that became destroyed, and it later there was no para left, the Torah itself had to be given over, Zot Gezerat Oraita. So what's going to be burnt up now? The Torah will be burnt up for the people of Israel. In other words, the printed Torah or the written Torah has to be burnt. Why? Because the Beit HaMikdash, in Yirmiyahu already says, you think the temple is the Beit HaMikdash. As long as the temple is there, is a sign from Hashem, you're still His people. So it says, Heichel Hashem, Heimakot Beit Yisrael. In the house of Israel is the true temple. And you have to change. You've got to live in holiness in your home. In your home, in your heart. And if it's not in your home, in your heart, then it will disappear also from the nation, Beit HaMikdash. So it disappeared. And there was no way where we get the sprinkling on the ashes. The sprinkling will come with the ashes. So first I've got to show you that some people say, we've got a Sefer Torah. That'll help us. We've got books, we've got libraries. That continues. Jewish culture continues. We've got Jewish libraries, got synagogues, got Judaica. So that's how the Jewish people will survive. Oh no, Hashem says no. Only if it's in your heart. So if the para aduma of the physical destruction of the Jewish people and our dispersal. Hasn't taught you the lesson, so what can to bring you the lesson? The Torah itself has to be burnt. He says this puts right the galut of the Torah. Because the Torah is not in your heart and your home. And that just like the para when there were no ashes of the para left, what happened? Then they had to find another para to work. Had to make another one. And this existed for as long as it existed. But when the accusations were so strong against the people of Israel, they were not internalizing the lesson of the Torah. Yeah, they gave honor, maybe even made crowns for the Sefer Torah. Did they learn it? Did they fulfill it? They even have libraries in Judaica, and they keep the manuscripts from ancient times and the big books they keep. But do they learn them? Do they bring them into their lifestyle? No. It's only external. Not good enough. Even amongst the great tzaddikim, not good. They're too self-centered. So this we say, it needs another tikkun. And he says, what is the tikkun that can stop the burning? The tikkun which will burn the Sefer Torah. It's only if you busy yourselves in the Torah day and night. Fulfill it. You say in your prayer in those, it doesn't say we will read in the Torah, it's not good enough. You've got to make Hege. Here to follow the Pshat and Malbim Rahish. Hege means steering. Your whole life has got to be steered by Torah and Mitzvah. And that's Shivit Hashem Liktim. Therefore, Zot HaTorah, that's why it says, there's a pasuk which is a riddle. Zot HaTorah Adam Ki Amud Ba'ohel. This is the Torah. The man has to die in the tent. So what's the lesson we learn from there? I'm sure you've learned this lesson from Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish gave this lesson, the interpretation. What is it? What is it? None of you know? Don't know? Rashi brings. Ein Adam koneh et Torah elim kenu memit et atzmo aleha. A person will only acquire the Torah if he killed himself over it. It means the way you can acquire Torah is not armchair reading or casual attendance at a shiur. You've got to throw yourself, you've got to immerse yourself in it. That's the tikkun. Put your whole self. That's why it's all talking about Boruch. Chazal say. And who says it? Rish Lakish. Who was Rish Lakish?
Highwayman, before he became a
he was Mr. Atlas. Yeah? He was the strongest man amongst the people of Israel in his time. The time of the Amoraim. And he was the head of a group of gangsters. And so he went to exercise by the Yarden, in swimming and also jumping right over the Yarden. He could jump right over. At the same time, you know what happened? Interesting story. There was another person. He was the greatest teacher in Judea, as it was known then, in the time of the Amoraim. The major power of the Jerusalem Talmud Yerushalayim, was who?
Rabbi Yochanan.
Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan was a very great scholar, the greatest scholar of his time in Eretz Israel. And there are thousands of statements of his in Halakha and Haggadah. And he went to the mikveh in the Yarden. So Rish Lakish saw him. And he was also one of the most handsome men in the whole country. He saw it so handsome. And Rabbi Yochanan saw that Rish Lakish was very powerful. So this gangster, he said, maybe you've got a sister, yeah? Which gangsters they're interested in nice looking wives. Maybe you've got a sister? He said, yes, yeah. Yes, she's... He asked what she looked like. He said, well, she's much better looking than I am. In any case, then they had a conversation. So he said to him, listen, you've got such strength. What do you use your strength for? For leading this gang? What do you get from it? So he started teaching a bit of Torah. he said to him, listen, you with such strength should dedicate it to Torah. So what happened? The Rosh decided, okay, because he was very impressed by also what Rabbi Yochanan told him. He's going to make a complete change. He wants to give it all up. Now he wants to put all his strength in learning Torah. He tried to jump over the Yarden, he couldn't. Because he'd taken it upon himself. That taking on himself, he said, I don't mind how difficult it is, because he was used to concentration. So he threw himself into Torah and became first the disciple of Rabbi Yochanan, then the brother-in-law of Rabbi Yochanan. He married his sister, and then he became the greatest partner in discussion with Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan learnt many things. He said if he had 24 questions, the shloks could answer them. You see, and now there's no one, and also somebody could talk to on his level, which is very, very high level. Now, I want to tell you something. It's happened in our generation, something similar. A great man whom I knew. You know, the Bnei Barak was built up by the Chazon Ish, but the Chazon Ish is the spiritual level. And the Chazon Ish was friendly with a very rich man who lived in Bnei Barak called Rabbi Yaakov Halpern. And he got this Yaakov Halpern to build up what's called Zichron Meah, the area in Bnei Barak, which is a big storehouse of Torah. And one of the sons of this, of Yaakov Halpern, who was very strong, and they went to Cheder, went to Yeshiva, Ketana, but at the same time, he learned
Professional wrestler.
Huh?
He was a wrestler.
He became a professional wrestler, and he went into the martial arts and reached the highest black belt. Is it the highest belt? In karate, the highest belt.
Yeah.
He kept touch with the Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish told him, he gave him advice. You want to go into this world of sport, you become a champion. You've always got to learn, keep the Torah wherever you're going, and that kept him. He became world champion wrestling, world champion in karate, and was the Mr. Atlas of Israel, the highest level. How did he do it? Because he trained himself in concentration, on the highest level. But then, he got married later. He decided he's giving it all up. He used to give demonstrations. He could still had his strong power. So he built up a business known as Optica Halpern. And in fact, he advertised the business by a video of him, how he's breaking through bricks and breaking through, with his fist. How he's able to knock down metals and so on. But he had enormous power. He went to learn with enormous concentration. Took himself a corner, in Ponovitch Yeshiva, in Chazon Ish, and learned non-stop. He could learn non-stop, concentrate. He's produced so many Sforim on a high level. Produced a biography of Rashi. He made an atlas of the Tanoim Amarot in Yeshiva. He's written many, he made a Torah-like encyclopedia. He achieved many things. Similar situation. In any case, but he had enormous power of concentration. He could sit and learn and study and work on it at a stretch, 10 hours. Making a break and then again. That's using his maximum power at concentration. He fulfilled this pasuk. So now it's come to the Moshe Chaim Tzaddik and says Resh Lakish. Resh Lakish's statement is the tikkun of the Eifa HaPorah. We've got no Eifa HaPorah today. We don't have ashes left. There's a certain place where I think there might be ashes buried. That's not clear. So what did he say in his time? So he said, if there's a huge kitrug of accusations against Am Yisrael, and the Torah therefore had to be given over, even to be burnt up. And here I can reveal something which I've only started now. And now is the time, and this is true. Because the Torah sees itself given over to strangers. Who's got the Torah? The Christians. Today also the Muslims, they're perverting it. Chatun Torah b'li mudai. But really, it's been taken away from the world, the Torah. It's burnt up. You think it's only burnt up downstairs in this world? It's been given over tachat shmira elionah shel giborim migiborei Israel. It's given over to the great saints of Israel, and is hidden. And therefore it's impossible today for anyone to escape from the hiddenness of Hashem. But our hope is that it was not really given over to the impure ones. Because now there's another way. Our God has shown us, and I can't speak about it too much, that in place of these accusations that come to burn the Torah, henceforth we'll see to it that they will no longer go after the pleasures of the world. Here in Italy, the Jews as a whole have gone after material pleasures. And it was a materialistic existence for many Jews on a pretty high level. And they didn't give themselves over to mita, to death from the pleasures. So therefore, it could unfortunately reach a terrible level. Chas v'shalom. But we, my group, hope it'll come to all of Am Yisrael. We have the healing before the sickness, before it comes too serious. For a number of months, we've already seen the results. We started with the foreign tikkun. He built up a group of people who learned. And I'll tell you what you do. Every healer in Italy should do the same. To be saved from this trap which our enemies are laying for us. And we're sure that if they will follow it, it'll become very strong. And this is the Seder in Obit HaMidrash. It's already mentioned in the Zohar that if the voice of Torah doesn't stop and goes on all the time, this will give strength to the Torah. And then, as long as the Chachamim of Am Yisrael, who night and day don't miss any time for learning, therefore we arrange for a group that will have learning without any interruption at any time. This is how it goes. There's 7 amongst us who've been chosen, who will fall this amongst themselves. Some will learn constantly from early morning to late at night, and they sleep in the night, and some will make a condition that this is for the tikkun of all Am Yisrael, and each person will work out for himself, but not just for himself, but should be Klal Yisrael. This is the Seder. He goes to make whole Seder. From Tefillah Chachret, a person has to prepare a shiur and teach a special shiur till the second one takes its place. And he'll take from the same sefer, but they're learning in Masechta, and he'll carry on from where he left off until the third one comes. And so they'll go until nightfall. And then everyone within will be that he will still have to daven, but he'll have to do it only if there's somebody else taking over his learning. And he won't stop learning until the other one takes it over. That the voice of Torah will constantly be heard. And the same is done in the night time as well. They'll do this each week, and this Hashem has chosen them to nullify all Gezerot Kashot, all the evil decrees, and especially this terrible decree of burning up all these Sefarim. So the Chachmei Yisrael should take this over, and I will be willing to fix this in every place. And he wants this friend of his, the teacher, to do the same zechut. And surely this is something in which we'll be successful. And this will bring about the return of purity until we get the next para aduma.
Rabbi, can I say something?
No, it's too late. I've gone over my time.
I was just gonna say they call us weeds even though we made almost all the vaccines there are. Even though most of them wouldn't be alive if it were not for us.